Welcome back to Your Story Medicine. Today I am with Harmony Lee, who is honored to be your gay dance teacher. In 2019, they left the military to teach self-healing through movement, and they have been dancing for joy ever since. They believe movement is medicine and play is nourishment. Their approach to dance blends somatic psychotherapy, embodiment, spiritual healing, and playfulness. Their online movement school provides students with a safe and respectable space for self expression and healing. Welcome, Harmony.
Oh, thank you so much, June. I'm delighted to be here.
And I also want to give you a special shout out because I have been a participant in your workshops, and it's an invitation for all of us to rediscover the inner child
Oh,
within
thank
us. I feel
you.
like we're so consumed with information, being told what to do. And I just reflect on how even growing up, it's like preschool all the way up until college, and then we go straight into these jobs where we are sedentary, where we're just like taking in information and we're not taught embodiment. Like
Mhm.
play is discouraged when we reach a certain age. And I'm just like reflecting on when the playground was taken. Middle
Oh,
school.
oof, yep. Where imagination games were no longer cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like I gotta hide my imaginary friend.
I know. What is
Or
it?
like the closest you get to play is like maybe through sports or anyway, so I just want to celebrate you for
Oh,
bringing that back to the adults. And in turn, I feel like for many people who have young children around them, it's like it's
mm,
okay for you to just like
yeah.
go back to being a 5-year-old. So,
Oh,
well,
thank you.
I would also love to know, what is it that you're celebrating about yourself today?
Well, what a beautiful question. I'm celebrating speaking with my own voice. I'm celebrating feeling my entire body today. I'm celebrating my breath because I can feel it from my inhale through my exhale down through the soles of my feet and into the earth. And that is a wonderful feeling because I struggle with disembodiment and my anxiety takes me out of my body sometimes. And having days like today where I feel grounded and present is a gift. And I am truly, truly celebrating. I don't think you can feel all of it from here, but it's a good day for me.
I love it. So, if we could take the gay dance teacher title out and describe your medicine in your own words, what would that be like?
My medicine is to share the power of dance that each of us holds. And it's my heartfelt, like in my bones belief that we all are dancers and dance teachers. Um, we all hold the authority within us to create, and we all have the power of creation in our DNA, in our ancestral lineage, in our unspoken subconscious minds. And that is the medicine that I use for myself. That is the medicine that I draw on when I create. And it permeates in everything that I do. So it's my true desire that people are able to awaken to that and use that to nourish them because we need it. We need more of this medicine. There's so many of
Yeah.
us who don't feel connected to our bodies, and that is one step towards feeling the freedom that we all deserve.
Mhm. So, speaking of ancestors, what is your ancestral lineage and how has this influenced your medicine today?
Mm. Um, well, let's pull that question into a few parts. I have my family of origin, and my ancestral lineage on my family of origin is Chinese, culturally on my mother's side, and German, Norwegian, Swedish-ish on my father's side. Um, my lineage on my mom's side is the one that I'm closest with. I come from a line of teachers. My grandmother is a professor of English in China. My mom is a professor of Chinese now in America. And somehow I'm a professor of dance in my head. So this is how I arrived here. But the idea of teaching and knowledge being sacred is something that I hold really dear. When my grandmother was growing up in Hong Kong, it was not considered appropriate for her to go to school. And her mother, she was the only daughter who was able to get an education, and she absolutely imparted that in her children of like, your education is important, learning, knowledge, discernment, wisdom, these are all valuable things that you can carry with you. And that shifted her trajectory for sure, because it shifted away from the socialized expectations of women towards her full being of, and she's a writer as well. So I also have a lineage of writers in my family that feels very close to me, because she's written not one, but 2 autobiographies, if that tells you something about the life that she's lived. And then considering my background and the closeness that I have with Chinese culture, there's also distance, because I am a American-born Chinese. I think this would be second generation. I always get confused if it's first or second
Me too.
generation. I believe I'm second, right? My mom got here, then I came out.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. But it is tricky not speaking with complete fluency my mother's native tongue, and that creates emotional distance, because even the language of our emotions is different. And one thing that is consistent between us is body language. But sometimes there are translation errors. There are things that are hard for me to talk about, like trauma and emotional pain, that just I don't have the words for, and that she's still learning, and that I don't know yet. So that just sort of brings me back to dance, and the reason that I think it's so powerful is that we can communicate as our full selves without words, without that barrier of communication. It can be very powerful, just to speak with our bodies. And I suppose lineage on my father's side is something that I really that also informs my practice and my work, because my dad is white, and not only is my dad white, but my dad is white supremacist. My dad is somebody who is highly racist, who has a lot of traits of toxic masculinity, who's extremely homophobic, who's extremely transphobic. And because of this, I'm estranged with him, right? I have had no communication or access, interaction, I would say, with my birth dads for, maybe 4 years. And there is pain there, because at the core of it, this is somebody who, by being unable to recognize how their whiteness impacts their children, their family dynamics, has created significant amounts of pain and abuse on the rest of us who are in the family. So that informs my work as well, because I'm intimately aware of both the privilege that I'm granted by being white passing, by being half white, but also the amount of pain that I'm still unpacking for myself from knowing how toxic, how harmful, and how destructive those forces unchecked can be on an interpersonal level.
Yeah. I feel like for us to be able to move our bodies is the process of remembering. And it's also the process of shaking out a lot of those old stories that have been stagnant in our bodies. And I know that was my experience when I first joined the pole dancing studio. And I was like, oh my God, I feel so at home in my body. After 30 years, I went to school. I learned about systems of oppression. I learned about the root causes of violence, and yet I never had a chance to truly heal from it in my own body. And not to say that healing is an end destination, which is why embodiment, dancing, movement gets to be a daily practice. And I'm curious with the relationship you have with your mother, because like you and like many people who may be listening who are children of immigrants, there can feel like a cutting of the umbilical cord when we don't know our own ancestral tongue. And the barriers are real, not just with language, but with culture. I don't recall my parents ever once telling me, at least in English, actually, I don't even know if they said it in Thai, I love you. But they would show it through other forms like cooking or hustling so that I could have the choices I have today. But how is it you have found through this path your well, have you experienced intergenerational healing by saying yes to this?
Oh, yes. Yes, profoundly, yes. Um, where can I start? I think I'll start with my body. I'll start with myself. The unification of my body and mind through dance was a healing process in itself. I think the intergenerational impacts of growing up socialized into whiteness and then having a lot of cultural distance from my Chinese lineage created this sort of split personality, right? I'm one way at home. I'm one way with people who are Chinese. I'm one way with people who think I'm white. I'm one way with people who are biracial. And this fracturing and compartmentalization manifested for me as like a separation between my head and my body. And I think the most direct way I can share that this impacted me was through an eating disorder. So I struggled with disordered eating for most of my high school years. And I say I struggle still because those voices never really go away for me, but the volumes are down, right? Like I have other voices that are nourishing and affirming. But being able to challenge them when I was living completely in my head was so hard, right? It's the only thing that I was hearing was those messages that were saying that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't thin enough, that I wasn't pretty enough, that I wasn't able to be more because of how I looked. So dance in itself is just dance as its pure form, just dance for me, dance for no other viewer or performance, was just a space for me to be alone with my body and my mind and not have them at war with one another. So that's like the start of the intergenerational healing, because then being able to talk to my mother in terms of sensation, embodied sensation, was a really big shift for us. And actually, this was a really cool conversation that we had. My mom started going to therapy last year, and without disclosing too much, because this is not, this is her story to tell, not mine.
Yeah.
But we got to have a conversation about the work that I do. And the work that I do involves healing from trauma. And it was really a wonderful moment for us to come together, because I was talking about the embodied sensations of trauma, like bracing when you're feeling like something bad's going to happen, that hunching in at the chest and protecting the internal organs, the fluttered heart rate, the disembodiment. These sensations, I was able to just start talking to her about those and the ways that I've experienced them. And she was able to connect those sensations to her experiences, her perceptions. And we were able to both see the same situation through the language of movement. Where previously it would have been, I'm going to try to explain it with as many clinical terms as I can. And she's going to ask me these questions because they're not matching up. But our experience in our bodies created an overlap for us to really talk about things that had been unspoken for my entire life.
Mm. Yeah. I just want to dance with my mom now.
Oh, it's so beautiful. I you know what? And I haven't, did I say that? Have I danced with my mom? I actually don't think I have, not in a traditional sense, but I'm like, there are times of like, I'm like, there are many ways to dance, right?
I don't think I've ever danced with my own mother too, but I know that through my own movement practice, I've been able to tune into the sensations that arise in my body whenever I am in a conversation that might usually trigger me. I mean, yes, like, you know me, I'm like, trigger is not a feeling. Let me break down what is coming up somatically inside of me and then speak to that part of myself and then find compassion for what may be coming up in the other, or like my own parents, like, oh, I see in this moment there's a disembodiment, and how is it that I can meet them lovingly and compassionately where they're at, knowing that there has been experiences in their own life that have caused them to disconnect, dissociate for the sake of survival, especially coming here to a country where they were told that they don't belong.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I feel like oftentimes the burden, the challenge of being children of immigrants, especially for those of us of the Asian diaspora, is achieving the American dream that our parents worked so hard for us to be able to carry on. And we met right when you were transitioning out of the military,
Right.
which when I think about the military, I'm like, that is the most, my own perception, that is the most disembodied job ever. So I'm curious what it was like for you, like the decision to get into that realm, and then what came up for you? Like, what was your deciding factor to walk away from that?
Mm. Well, let's start at the end. The deciding factor for me to leave the military was an embodied feeling. I'll be really honest. I was getting ready to pick, we call it picking orders for your next duty station. So I was preparing to transfer to a new workplace. And my my liaison had said, like, you know, we can send you to Japan, we can send you across the country, we can put you somewhere where your career will advance. And there was no part of my body that could say yes to it. Even though it looked good on paper, it looked like the right thing to do next, there was no part of me that was saying yes. And it was really scary to follow because there is security, right? There is assurance and predictability and routine in being able to follow that path and stay with my military family, right? I had community in the military as well. So leaving my job meant leaving part of my family um, in a very real way for me. But that was this deciding factor. I couldn't bring it forward to say yes with a full yes. And I knew that for myself, like that feeling wouldn't go away. I've never regretted a decision. that came from an embodied yes or no, but I have regretted decisions where I have thought my way into a situation, and had my brain, my thinking mind project over what my body was feeling.
And I remember you were pretty top ranking. You were
Well, I
checking off
don't know
all
about
the
top ranking.
boxes. I don't know. I don't know the language over there, but I just know you were given, like, you were trusted.
Yeah.
They trusted you. They wanted to
Mhm.
promote you. That, for me, that is like American dream and ultimate allegiance to the
Mhm.
United States.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I think it's, and then let's like maybe like piece that out, because this is also, um, I think a lot of people hold this conception that because the military appears and is centered around whiteness and imperialism and colonialism, we kind of forget that the military is also made out of people who come
Yeah.
from all sorts of cross sections, and also that the military does, um, provide, or recruits directly, right? Um, from people who are impoverished and from people who are seeking immigration and stability. Um, that the military is like, has a lot of BIPOC folks, has a lot of queer folks, who has actually, the military has a huge number of trans people. Um, Trans people actually twice as likely to serve in the military as the general population. The,
Mm.
the military has so much, um, diversity within it, but it's not really shown. Um, so before I get off on too much of a
Yeah.
tangent, yeah, I think it's like, you asked about embodiment. Um,
Well, and I also want to thank you for naming that, because I think it's important for people who are listening to know that yes, the military is made up of people, and there's people like Harmony who were there, and how is it that we don't completely dismiss this institution, but also look at the work that you were doing in there and the ways that it was changing what was happening from within,
yeah, well, let's, I
and
can.
giving yourself permission to walk away, of course.
uh, so yeah, just to kind of like, give a little bit of context for folks listening. I worked in the field of public health. I was an environmental health officer, and it meant that my job was to, um, manage and support, um, outbreak situations, public health emergency situations, you know, somewhat like the way that public health systems are interacting with the pandemic, right? There is a emergency or a crisis, there is a spike in cases. My job was to, both try to prevent those from happening, but also to respond when they did come up. Um, so you said like, was, that feels like the core allegiance to the United States. My allegiance was to my sailors. My allegiance was to the people, and there, it's a really tricky, I think, cognitive line, because I'm very aware that I was part of a harmful system. I'm very acutely aware of the fact that, I was part of a system that oppresses and harms and creates violence and war. Um, I don't get a pass from that just because I was on the
Yeah.
medical side. Um, I don't get a pass from that just because I didn't carry a weapon. I don't get a pass from that just because I wasn't deployed into a combat zone. Um, that is still something that I am aware of and atoning for and practicing, unlearning very deeply in my life. And that also makes me unpopular, if I'm being very honest. I'm very aware that that means that in circles of liberation and, um, even, in circles of transformative justice, that I am trusted less, because of my
Mhm.
background in the military. And I want to, I think, just say that it's okay. Like, it's okay. You don't need to like me. You don't need to trust me. But I'm not the only veteran, and I'm not the only veteran who's also been hurt by the system. Um, and there are many of us who get out and have our lives broken because that same system that wanted to keep us in completely drops us when we are removed from usefulness. when we are no longer of service, when we are no longer government property. That impact hurts too. So if there are veterans listening, I just want to say that, I see you, I feel you, like you're not the only one. And it does create, I hope, an opportunity for folks to, I don't know, get to know some of us as humans, right? If transformative justice is the goal, I hope that there is space for those of us who are part of these larger systems, or were part of these systems that are of harm, but that there is space for us to transform moving forward and not further those systems, right? To dismantle them.
I mean, we could just look at our homeless population and see
Mm-hmm.
how many people are veterans and are
Right.
not getting the support they need.
Yeah. And I think that's, how do I even want to frame this? The idea of discomfort, going back to what you said about like triggers, like I am aware that sometimes when people hear like, oh, you're a veteran, they start making assumptions about the way I conduct myself, or the way that I will be in a justice or liberation community, right? But I also wonder that, where that discomfort may give way, and create space for folks to show up authentically. And again, knowing that trust is something that's built over time, and it is also very valid to not trust those who have been in that kind of institution. I totally understand. Totally understand.
Look, I just want us all to have a dance off. Like if there's conflict happening, let's just have a dance off. Let's just get it out of our bodies and let's strip it, like even. And what I appreciate about you so much is the ways that you embody what it looks like to dismantle binaries on all fronts beyond gender. It's like you came into this world already dismantling the binaries of race. And it's like, what I could be a veteran and I could also be your favorite gay dance teacher. And so I think for me, liberation looks like getting away with the labels altogether and coming back to find safety in this vessel, in this body, so that we can meet each other with just like, I don't know. I also don't want to be like spiritually bypassy, but I'm just like, we're two human beings having, we're two spiritual beings having this experience, and these systems have created this dissonance. Like it is because of these systems that we tend to be at conflict with one another. And so I just really needed to acknowledge that.
Oh, well, thank you for acknowledging that, but also for that very kind reflection on an observation of me. of yes, like binaries hurt. Being assigned a category and no space in between is painful. It hurts. It creates a disembodiment when we are not able to be all that we are, but forced with this, like, you have to choose. And yeah, I think that the binary in dance, that's something that I'm really passionate about trying to dismantle and break too, because so many dancers quit. So many young dancers develop low self-esteem and body image, negative body image issues because of the way that even the culture of dance tells us that you have to be a male dancer or a female dancer. And these are the roles that you get. And those kind of binaries hurt too, you know? So yes, there are many of these categories that I hope to, that I hope we all are able to reclaim, or I suppose like reclaim that space in between by embodying all that we are.
Yeah. Ooh, I want to go back to the tattoo,
Yes.
because I remember you telling me that that was one of the epiphany moments you had where you're just like, okay, what I'm doing is not working. So tell us about that experience.
Ooh, well, okay, this is going to be a new story with a little bit of an update, since I've last talked to you. So for everybody listening, I have a tattoo on my back. I actually got this tattoo shortly before leaving the military, and um, the tattoo itself is designed off of a funerary bronze vessel, like an ancient Chinese um, offering vessel. Um, and when I was, designing it for my my body, I was thinking, okay, well, this is a way that I can have my ancestors at my back. Um, and while I was getting this tattoo on the sitting where it was supposed to be completed, and by the way, this took, I'm guessing, how many sittings? Like three. It took 4 sessions. Um, on the third session, my nervous system was so dysregulated, so inflamed that the anxiety, the depression, the spiraling, the disembodiment that I was feeling while transitioning out of the military, all those things um, inflamed my skin so much that my back started to resemble an orange peel in texture, and it was pushing the ink back out. And my artist, who had been working with me for a number of years, who's tattooed 7 other spots on my body, was like, this is not okay. I can't keep going without possibly hurting you. And that was a moment where I had to really accept defeat. I'm going to say, I wanted so badly to have closure. I wanted so badly for this piece to be done before I moved into a scary, unknown part of my life. And it just wasn't going to happen because my body would not let it. My body was so determined to tell me, like, if you don't say no right now, we're going to do it for you. And this ink is just going to be spit back out. And not only that, the aftermath of that healing, I was not able to feel pain on my back. The next morning, I actually woke up lying on my back where my tattoo was and just thinking, there's something wrong with this. Tattoos are painful. Tattoos hurt after you get them. All my other tattoos, I've had some tenderness in the next day, and I'm here lying on my back, unable to feel it. And that was a really strong signal that something in my nervous system was trying to get a message out to me. And I was not hearing it. If I'm being very honest, I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear that, all right, you aren't listening to this pain. Well, we're not going to talk anymore. Sit in silence. Think about your life. What do you want to do with this message? Because my body got tired of trying to tell me that I was in pain when I kept pushing through. And I think for many people, we struggle with this idea, especially for those of us who have intersectional identities and multiple intersections in our identities, where we don't get the privilege to break down. We don't get to slow down. We don't get the social space that says it's okay to rest, but it's okay to rest. And we need rest, and we need recovery, and we need time to cry. We need time to break down and process and grieve and feel these things in full, because the way that our this society pushes us forward and doesn't give us time to let our bodies complete these cycles of stress or grief or mourning, um, just keeps that chronic level of stress within us. And at a certain point, it's untenable, right? That was my breaking point. where my body just said, okay, this is as far as we can go and no further. And that was a really hard thing to listen to. But I will give the update from now a little over a year and a half later. The body remembers all these pains, but the body also has so much capacity to heal. I didn't know if I could repair my nervous system. I didn't know if I would get a sensation of pain back. I didn't know if it was miswired forever, right? But I can feel today. I can feel my back. I can move. I can notice pain. And there's something really funny with the tattoo. It's actually was created along my spine, right? So it's symmetrical along my spine. In the past year, I've had so many different releases and openings in my back related to releasing some, again, chronic pain and emotional pain held in my body. My tattoo is now crooked at the bottom.
What?
If you were to see it, the bottom of the tattoo is about an inch to the right of where it used to be. And I think that just to show, I actually enjoy the imperfection of it because it shows how much I've traveled. This is now my alignment. And that body, that image that was mapped to a body that I used to have, right? That's the alignment that it used to be, is just showing me that this isn't, my alignment looks differently now. And it's kind of funny. And this is hilarious to me. At the bottom of this image, there's a circle. Also, pro tip for people getting a perfect circle tattooed on their body. Just note that you might get an oval one day because my sacrum actually dropped, my hips released, and it created space. And now I have an oval instead of a perfect circle at the base of this tattoo. So the body's incredible, and it's doing what it needs to do, and I'm here to honor it.
I love it. The first part of me was like, oh, I think you need to get checked for that. And then I was like, oh, that's so sweet how you can just accept your body for all the ways that it's changing. So, what are some of the things that you are currently doing to stay grounded? And also, what is it that you've been learning to release in the process?
Well, things that help me. Sometimes it's hard to dance. I'll just be really honest. Sometimes even the idea of like, I'm gonna put on my dancing clothes, put on a soundtrack, and I'm gonna really like freestyle for a while. Sometimes my brain's not there. But embodied listening is something that I like to refer to as a like pre-movement practice. So that's something that's been helping me a lot. Is if I'm not feeling up for movement, I'll put on a song and I'll try to listen to it with my body as much as I can. So that means nodding my head, tapping my toes, snapping. Like I love snapping along to songs. It just like it brings me so much joy to be the percussion section and like counting through. But using embodied listening as a way to ground has been really helpful and consistent for me. The other area, I suppose, like what is a good practice? What has been my helpful practice? I'll keep it with myself and my experience. Slowing down, finding as many ways to slow down as I can. I'm somebody who also has ADHD. I'm autistic, and overstimulation is something I'm always trying to manage. So finding practices that intentionally help me slow down, like Tai Chi, like breath work, those are areas that if I put a little bit of investment into during my day, the benefits are really beautiful. It's like putting a little like gift for my future self.
Look, everything you're sharing is like going back to my ancestors' ways.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, like movement arts in Chinese culture are like some of the first ways that I connected with my Chinese culture is through martial arts. I went to a karate school that had a style that was both kung fu and karate kind of hybridized. And that was really truly feeling like I am moving the way my ancestors did. And I'm moving in community, in right relationship with other practitioners, other artists, other teachers. And that's community, right? Even though I didn't get that experience in China, I didn't, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it's still authentically part of that movement art.
Yes.
So yes, finding
And it's in your body.
yeah, and it's in my body now.
Yeah. And one of the things that we were just talking about is how you were studying dance in
Oof.
school, like
Mm-hmm.
university. And I was like, I remember when I was an arts major and I felt like I was losing touch with my creative side because of the judgment from my teachers, being graded for my craft, and then realizing that so many of the greats that we studied and many of the greats that we'll never even know
Mm-hmm.
are the ones who chose to carve their own path, to break the rules, and to create something new. And maybe for some of us, it's new with a K. We are remembering. And so the beauty of the work that you're doing today is that you don't need to be at a studio. You don't need to take all the classes in order to claim yourself as a dancer.
Yeah.
So I know that you created this beautiful offering for, I mean, every offering that's created, I imagine it as an offering for our past generations and our future generations and for our younger selves. So tell us about this new book that you just created.
Oh, yay. Well, thank you. So I created a dance book. I created a book called 7 Days of Embodied Movement. And there are 7 movement prompts that correspond, to whatever day you choose to do them. To get people in a regular practice, because something that I found, I actually started learning to dance late in life. I late in life, that's in quotes, but I don't have a dance background. I didn't grow up dancing, and in fact, dancing was really shamed in my family. So I didn't move. I was terrified to, and it wasn't until I was in my mid-20s. I also started at a pole studio, and that was my first introduction to dance. So I created this book for people who are wanting to start dancing but don't know how, or are trying to return to dance after leaving it for whatever reason. It may be either injury or finances or racism or transphobia. There are so many reasons that dancers quit. And I really want there to be more dancers dancing in the ways that dance was stolen from them, right? That's a quote from Audre Lorde, and I think it's so beautiful. Like, what is the dance that was stolen from us, and how can we find it again? Really. So this book is a movement practice to support people in their home dance practice.
Yes, I would love to hear an excerpt from it.
Ooh, okay. Well, let me do a quick little introduction of before we begin.
Mhm.
Before we begin, everything in this book has no right or wrong answer. There is no wrong way to move. As long as you are present, as long as you are not hurting yourself or others, there is no wrong way to move. And I say that because for many of us, there's this idea that dance has a correctness, dance has a technique, dance has you either are right or you're wrong. You don't even have to be on beat. You're doing this at home. I don't care if you're on beat or not. You can do whatever you want. You could do like the chicken dance for each one of these and be perfectly good. And I would say, great job doing the chicken dance. So let's start with day 1. So the day 1 intention is explore. Today is about exploration. There is no judgment in exploring. We are simply gathering information about how we move and noticing the associated feelings involved when we do move. I give a music suggestion here, and it's Trampoline by Shade. And for the movement prompt, feel free to close your eyes, follow along. You actually don't need music for this if you don't want it. But the movement prompt is this. Imagine you are an alien who has just been cloned into a new body or form or machine. In your mind, describe and visualize this alien form. How would you move if you were brand new to this form? What does it feel like? And if aliens don't spark your creative interest, you are invited to body swap with a being of your choosing. There is no right or wrong way to do this, but I invite you to remain present with embodying the movement. And you might feel a little silly or maybe a little embarrassed, but this is where we can apply our non-judgmental intention to really explore something new. So after this movement prompt and just flowing with it, there are some reflection questions I'd like to share. So what was it like to move your body in a new way? What did your alien or body swap form teach you? And to close this practice, I have some affirmations. And June, I invite you to repeat them along with me if you feel called. My body is full of beautiful stories.
My body is full of beautiful stories.
There is no wrong way to move.
There is no wrong way to move.
I have permission to explore my body in an entirely new way.
I have permission to explore my body in an entirely new way.
I am open to new possibilities.
I am open to new possibilities. Wow. How our body is such a wise, wise teacher. So, um, where is it that people can go to find this book and to participate in more of these amazing prompts?
Um, if you check out yourgaydanceteacher.com, the day one prompt is free, so you can download it or get the audio version, whatever is the easiest for you to access. But day one and the introduction is free. And then the full book is on there as well. And then you can have all 7 prompts, including what to do next. But I just really hope that whether you dance with me or not, that you find some space to dance and maybe some inspiration today to move your body in a way that feels creative and free. And June, I would love to hear how that practice went for you as well. I saw you gave
Yeah. So there's always the fear first of, I feel so silly. What would it be like for me to walk out of my apartment for my neighbors to witness me being this like alien that is just leading with curiosity? And then I just imagined my neighbors being in fear and in judgment, which then made me want to just like get back into human form so that I could be socially acceptable and not be potentially harmed for moving differently. And it really made me think about not just others who are differently bodied and the ways that society may judge them for that, but also the ways that I still find myself holding back from embracing my own uniqueness.
Yeah. Oh, those are some deep feelings. And I'm glad that you named them because I think this is for day one, I really wanted to have a playful exploratory prompt, but that shifting from the expressive to the critical, and that critical being also part of our survival mechanism, as you pointed out. Like,
Yes.
so many of us are at risk of violence because of the way we look, or for moving differently, right? For moving away
Yeah.
from the norm. And part of this practice is about reclaiming that in a way that feels authentic and gentle. And I think one thing that I will add, because sometimes people think that this dance has to look like dance. It doesn't. It can look like anything. If you dance in your head, if you close your eyes, put on the music, and imagine what your form would be doing, that's valid as well. You can externalize it as big or as small as you would like. And all of it is just to give us permission to be in our bodies in whatever form that looks like.
I love that. Thank you so much, Harmony. I have one final question for you.
Yes.
So, if you could envision yourself as a future ancestor, an elder getting ready to transition into the ancestral realm and time travel back to Harmony, who was it felt stuck in a career that they knew was no longer serving them, or a relationship. If you could speak to others who are also feeling that stagnation of like, it's not safe for me to change, it's not safe for me to leave, what is it you would say to them?
I would say listen to your senses. And this is actually the same wisdom that my grandmother gave me. She is very, very old. And also, the conversations that we have are with an acknowledgement that our time is limited. And usually she doesn't give me answers. She'll just remind me where to look. And when times feel uncertain, and especially when we are coming up against something that we want to change, but we don't know how, just remembering that we are sensible and sensual beings is a compass that aligns us towards right relationship, right? Our bodies know where balance is. Our bodies know how to get us there. And being able to attune our senses to the present moment is where we really can find not just our truth, but big truths, right? Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams makes that distinction of there's like the lowercase t truth, and then there's the uppercase t truths. And the uppercase t truths are often paradoxes. And those are really difficult to wrap our heads around, but through our sensual experience, through our senses, we will find the right way.
That's so beautiful. And I want to add one more thing to that, which is that in coming back to our senses, it doesn't always feel good.
Nope, it sure doesn't. It feels awful sometimes.
Yes, and the invitation is to no longer go to no longer go and do the things that distract us from sitting with that discomfort, but to allow ourselves to move through it, knowing that there is this ancestral version of ourselves that's like, it's okay, it's safe, I got you, this will pass.
This will pass.
Yeah.
Nothing is permanent, the good, the bad, or otherwise.
And thank you for being an embodiment of that.
Oh, well, thank you for this conversation, and I thank you for everybody listening. I hope that you find this to be nourishment and medicine for you.